And the first thing on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from May 22nd.
Motion approved.
Okay, support if you need that. Really, okay. No discussion. We'll go ahead and move on to our presentations. The first thing up is Harbor Shores Development Plan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You want to sit here?
Yeah.
You've got the controls?
Yeah.
That'll be great.
I got that.
Hello, I'm Chris Cook, and this is Stephanie Harvey Vandenberg with me. And we just thought it was an opportune time to kind of bring your committee members up to speed as to what Harbor Shores has been doing in the past. It's been about 15 years, some of our plans for the future.
Okay.
So go ahead. Yeah, so just kind of a real short summary is that Harbor Shores is self-sustaining. It is it's self-funded. It is not supported financially by Whirlpool. It was at one time, but it's not anymore. We also operate a top 90 in the United States golf course, which is sustainable and here to stay. And then just an acknowledgement of Whirlpool's involvement over the years. They've served as a tremendous catalyst for the project and a number of other initiatives in and around the city of Benton Harbor. And now it's our turn as Harbor Shores, and it's our turn as other developers within the community to go ahead and take the ball now and run with it. And then further, that Harbor Shores has created $22 million worth of tax base. And in large part, that was made easier by the initiation of what's called a TIF district, or tax increment financing district, which allowed the development to receive some of that incremental increase in property tax to pay off the infrastructure costs, which I'll go into a bit more detail here in a moment. So as businesses left our area, largely the industry along Graham Avenue, it started to look like this. Things got real deteriorated and dilapidated quickly. And so there's a couple pictures there to show you that. And then also a few more in that Graham Avenue area. And that, just to point out there, that $4.4 million was spent as part of the project to bring those buildings down and make that area available for development. And that's an aerial picture of what things looked like years ago before the project got started. You can see that there were a number of those industrial buildings that were kind of left to waste. Graham Avenue didn't go all the way and connect up with Riverview. There was no MTech. There was no Renaissance Athletic Club. So the area was definitely in need of some redevelopment. And that's where Harbor Shores stepped in. And so now it looks like this. That is much greener, obviously. It's the driving range, the main clubhouse. You can see off to the left is the Renaissance Athletic Club. You can see the road is now paved, and then part of the first hole is in there, as well as some of the creek that's been cleaned up just to the north there. So now just to point out a few of the key milestones and some of the impacts that we've had in the area is that we've cleaned up about 500 acres of the entire site. And it was 194 different parcels that came together to make what is now known as Harbor Shores. So there were 3 million square feet. Those industrial buildings I showed you totaled up to 3 million square feet of condemned, dilapidated industrial buildings. That resulted then in 140,000 tons of solid waste. So that's stuff that would go to a landfill. Bricks, blocks, old drums, there was concrete and tires and you name it, it was out there. There were old appliances. There were even some junk cars, and it was enough to fill an entire football field 70 feet high worth of stuff. So quite a bit. And then, oh, by the way, we had a super fun site, which is located where the North Pier Brewing warehouse is right now. And so there's been $15 million spent there to clean up that contaminated site that had a bunch of old radioactive parts from back in the air war days. We also worked through the cleanup of the Paw Paw River, $2.1 million to restore the banks of that river. Again, removed a bunch of solid waste, similar type stuff. Restored the wetlands. So the wetlands that you see within the Gene Clark Park and elsewhere along the Paw Paw River have been restored. Now those areas, particularly the Paw Paw River, is beautiful. It's used by many. There's people out there on little boats and stand-up paddle boards and recreating, that sort of thing. We also constructed 2 boat launches, the primary one being at the end of Graham Avenue there, and then 3 fishing platforms are on the trail system. So we see a lot of use with those as well. So in total, $74 million was needed to clean up, add some new roads and the infrastructure, all within the community. It also included the removal of the M63 interchange. So back in the day, some of you may remember that there was a full interchange there at Clock Road and M63. It was elevated, it was a full clover leaf. That was all brought down to grade and made that available for development. Next is some of the other infrastructure improvements and milestones. A new bridge on M63 that goes over Hickman Park Road is the first picture, and I'll kind of work my way around in a clockwise fashion. A new bridge on North Shore Drive was constructed. It was much needed. There were holes actually in that bridge. There was concrete falling through down to the river. It was made tall enough for golf carts to fit under, and that was done right at the outset of the project. A new bridge on 8th Street, so right by the MTech, former MTech, and now right near that first tee of the golf course. New bridge there. And then on Clock Road, the one where the Mount Cursor is right now, that's one that just got to bugging me. So that little stretch of Clock Road is right from 8th Street to the river, kind of around the curve there. And people were driving too fast, if you will, tearing up the edge of the road. It wasn't draining. All the gravel had been sort of sprayed off the side of the road. It was onto the walking path there. The shrubs were finding their way out into the path, and I said, I can't take it anymore. So Harbor Shores actually went ahead and just did that on the city street. Paved a little strip along there to make that wider so folks would make that turn easier and not tear up that edge. Stripe the edge to let people know this is where you're supposed to stay inside of, and then replace the gravel and repave the trail there. So that was just, one thing we kind of took upon ourselves. It needed doing. We figured somebody had to do it. Graham Avenue, I showed you a little bit before about how that came to be and how that's been extended. And then certainly the improvements along Riverview Drive, in particular the Emma Jean Hall apartments, are phenomenal. That's on our property. And thanks to Whirlpool for also making those apartments happen. And then lastly, in this area, the bridge that goes along Whitwam Drive, just off of Riverview, was part of the project. And then last fall, we dedicated that bridge once again to former Mayor Charles Freeman Joseph. improved the plaque that was there before. It was a plywood sign. Now we made something that's a little more substantial and nice looking. And then some things at Gene Clock Park. Certainly that's been a partnership between Harbor Shores and the city since the inception of the project. We've invested $4 million in adding 38 acres of new parkland and trails to the city system. There's been upgrades, improvements to the park itself, certainly along the river again, the new kayak launches, entrance to the park, the birdhouse is shown on there, the meeting area with the other blue roof to the left of that. Beach is maintained by us and the city together, various roles we take upon ourselves to do there. And then all of the trails and cart paths within Harbor Shores are for the public. So they are used for golf, but they are also available for public use. And that's been something we've really taken seriously, is to make sure that this development is for the public, the residents, and those that live here. And then just a short summary of the housing that we have helped bring to the community. Champions Village, which is the first picture right there, is 4 units that are golf villas. They're right there on the main clubhouse property. And then the Enclave, which is just below that, actually has 3 homes built, 3 to go. We're planning to start 1 more in the fall, and then hopefully that sells and we can keep that going until it's finished, 3 more. The Trailside project in the upper right is right there along Clock Road, and that is fully built out, 19 units there. The apartments, again, 80 units there, full or nearly full at the moment. I thought so. And then Grand Boulevard brought in 31 homes there. Those were not developed directly by Harbor Shores, but we feel that the golf course being there certainly helped bring that those sales to happen, brought value to that property, and has helped sustain that little subdivision there. All of these are in the city, so there's 137 total units within the city. That's $22.1 million of tax base again, which is over $565,000 in property taxes every year, and then also derives city income tax from those folks that are now moved into town. By comparison, St. Joe, we've had 99 units, and Benton Township 53, so Benton Harbor has more units than those other 2 communities. The Strategic Leadership Council took upon a housing study, and that showed demand for rental occupied units in Benton Harbor of 500, and then also owner occupied units in Benton Harbor of 175. If that were to happen, we would have the tax base increased by another $100 million, which could raise about $2.5 million per year if we're able to achieve building for that demand. And that's where I mentioned at the start, Harbor Shores and other developers can play a role in making that happen. In your master plan, we look to continue to collaborate with you and continue the good work that you have all been doing, and I think how we can help. And I picked 2 particular areas. One is your focus on residential and commercial development, certainly to increase that residential population, increase the tax base, increase housing for working families. We want it to be high quality, affordable, for workforce, middle housing, multifamily options are certainly part of our plans. And your master plan says that any of that new housing should be gentrification proof. And I would say that we wholeheartedly support that. And as a matter of fact, the parcels that we would build upon are already been leveled. So it's not like we're going into a neighborhood, moving people out, bringing in new housing. We're filling in spots that are already vacant. And so I think that meshes nicely with what your vision of the master plan was. It certainly adds new water system users, which I know we can use, and then adds to the public school population of potential students to come into the school system. It helps us continue to clean up the contaminated sites that might be still left throughout the community, those condemned structures, just like what was done in the initial phases of the project. Your master plan calls for more robust development than the SLC study showed. So hats off to you for dreaming bigger. There's 500 city-owned lots that were designated for that middle housing by 2040 to fill those in. If we're able to do that, or you are, with ours and other people's help, that would raise another $1.2 million per year in tax base. You've also shown a desire for an interim step of getting 200 of those city-owned lots developed by 2030, which shockingly is coming on us fairly quickly. 2030 is, I can't believe it. But that would raise $500,000 per year in taxable revenue, property tax revenue. And then your ultimate plan was beyond those city-owned lots, but through the entirety of the city to look at 1,500 total new homes by 2030. And that would raise $5.7 million per year. So Harbor Shores can play a role in that, but certainly it's going to take others. And I think the investment that we have made and other folks in town have made shows that it can happen. Hopefully gives people sort of the impetus to go ahead and do more. The other component of the master plan that I wanted to touch on was improvements to parks. And certainly we've worked with partners on a number of your parks. One of those main partners is Whirlpool Corporation. They've adopted a number of parks and certainly helped get a lot of those improvements done. A couple other goals that were noted in the master plan. Adding seating along the trails, that has been done through the entirety of the Harbor Shores project. And we are now going through and refreshing seating. Some of them have been damaged either by the elements or vandals or whatever. So in Gene Clock Park and throughout the trail system, we're going in and refreshing those benches. Your master plan also mentioned that others should be responsible for maintaining some of your parks. We have plans for a new park adjacent to the Emma Jean Hall Apartments. Just south of them, I'll show you a picture of it in a second. We will maintain that public park space. So again, trying to be aware of your master plan and follow through on that. Your master plan also calls for more bike parking, which will be provided at the plaza. It's provided also throughout Harbor Shores. And then shared parking arrangements. We're encouraged also. We're working with our neighbors at the plaza to incorporate some shared overflow parking there. And then connections to the overall countywide trail system. This will definitely become a part of and a trailhead for some of that overall vision that takes us from Benton Harbor south to the state line and for now north to the Whirlpool campus, and we hope to the county line ultimately. And then the last part is to restore and open up the ship canal. That plaza project is adjacent to the ship canal, and we hope serves as a catalyst to bring development and improvement to the ship canal further up that canal into the downtown area. So that's all right from your master plan. Now here's a picture of that riverfront plaza. We have just a couple parking spaces, thus necessitating the need for some shared parking. We didn't want to use up this site with parking. We wanted to use it up with good stuff like shaded seating, some area for food trucks, a little performance area, which is the semicircle closest to the Emma Jean Hall, apartments, some grassy space, area to recreate, whether it's throw bags or sit by a fire pit. And then also in the lower left corner, this picture got a little too big, so I pulled out a piece that's just to the left of the larger picture, which would be a kayak launch and fishing platform there. So we're hoping to take bids on that project actually in late July, and then get started on construction of that in the late fall. And then just a few more positive impacts. First Tee program has served hundreds, if not thousands, of Benton Harbor youth. I see we have a supporter on the panel there. And then Renaissance Athletic Club obviously is along Graham Avenue, wonderful new site there. Harbor Shores hosts the golf outing that supports the Whirlpool Foundation support of our 3 local public schools, including Benton Harbor High School, the First Tee program, the Boys and Girls Club robotics program. And that was $3.2 million of local support in 2023. Looking forward to doing that again this year. Harbor Shores also hosted the KitchenAid Senior PGA Tournament, and that has provided millions of dollars to local organizations. And then we also have art sprinkled throughout the development, whether it's each of the little T markers that are pretty special, or the grapes that are along the as you head up towards the 10th hole along Inman Park Road, and various other locations. So that kind of gives you a sense of where things are and where we have been. We do want to invite the city commissioners on a tour of the properties. Yeah, okay. So yes, who can we engage in building and funding? Well, you. So we want to go on a tour. And we're looking at July 2nd or July 9th for that. And then also we have our local builders, contractors, developers, Cornerstone Alliance, the Berrien Community Foundation can play a role in this. The MEDC can play a role in this. And the governor's housing initiative, she has called for Michigan to become the place where people want to come to build new housing and to live, and so we can play a role in that as well. So certainly take this opportunity now if you have any questions or want any clarification on the materials I covered.
So I had a question regarding the housing. So you're saying that in the future you plan on doing some middle housing? Because I know in the past it does not seem like it was middle, but that's something that in the future you plan on doing?
Yes. We are admittedly a resort community, and that has tended to be, just as you described, maybe a higher cost product. I think the Emma Jean Hall Apartments have shown us that that product was desired and demanded. And so we do intend to do more apartment style development. Single family home costs are quite high right now, so making those affordable is difficult. So we want to look at some attached product to try to help become a little more efficient, maybe duplex, quadplex type things. Try to get that price point where it is a little bit more affordable in that middle group. It's a struggle, but it's something that we're committed to doing.
No, just ask one of the questions around the Renaissance Club. So we're talking coming east also of that down to 8th Street with new development from there. Because I'm kind of looking at, you know where Connections is? The yoga place used to be. That's on Clark Road, runs right where it sits right on the river, Paw River. So I'm looking at from that point coming up to 8th Street, is that past the Renaissance Club? And
So that space right, right to the right of Renaissance, right
Right here?
there, yes. Our plan there is to do a couple more of those golf villas and probably a little short golf course. By short, I mean like holes that are 20, 30 yards long, that people that are just beginning the game can come and enjoy and try to get used to being out there. And then maybe at some point they graduate to the bigger course. Further along the road, along Graham Avenue, is open space that has been used for parking for the PGA, set up for the PGA, a lot of that. We're developing plans for what that might look like. Don't have anything firm enough to share with you yet, but we are definitely looking at something there. That may be a spot where that apartment type product could work, but we're trying to do our due diligence on that right now.
thank you.
Anyone in the public have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
In reference to the 565 thousand with the property tax. Now, is that property tax going to Benton Harbor forever?
Well, forever is a long time,
I know it
yes, it's the,
is there a time period on that it'll revert back to someone else getting the tax?
no, the numbers that I'm quoting are for properties that are entirely within the city of Benton Harbor, have been within the city of Benton Harbor, and will continue to be in the city of Benton Harbor.
All right, if there is no other questions, thank you, very informative.
Thank you much.
Excited about the future.
Thank you.
And I think that was our intent, right? You know, when we were here last and we talked about and presented the Riverview Plaza project, there were a number of questions around Harbor Shores as Chris was talking. What we heard as our takeaway was there were still a lot of questions and curiosities around the Harbor Shores development. And so Chris and I both agreed that it was probably important and necessary for us to come back and just kind of share where we have been and where we are, right? You know, we understand that, you know, we do have some new elected officials that weren't at the table, you know, in the beginning, right? And so we felt like it was really equally important for you all to have the information in front of you so that, you know, as we talk through and talk about and as projects potentially would come, that you were equipped with the information to help make informed decisions as we work and continue to collaborate together moving forward to build and strengthen our community.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, we had one more question.
I hope that as development comes closer, there will be a lot of opportunities for exchange or further sharing of actual plans.
Certainly, so our plans, as they evolve, require them to come before the planning commission for approvals. And so there's a process that's defined that would allow for opportunities to see what's coming and provide input and feedback on those as well.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, next on our agenda, under our report section, is our community and economic development. Resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute a contract for SHPO reviews for 27, or I'll just let you go.
Basically, what that's about, anytime a municipality is preparing to demolish a number of properties, especially homes, it's required to have a SHPO review. That's the State Historical Society. Take a look at the properties to be sure they don't have the historic value. In order to do that, last time we did it, we used Commonwealth Heritage, and they did it well for us at a reasonable price. We're asking them to do the same thing again on 27 units. And just wanted to make you aware and get commission support for me to enter into the contract to proceed with that. It'll be paid for with CDBG funds.
And if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that this amount is reasonable based on what we've done in the past?
Yes.
Anyone on the board have a question?
Yes, these properties, we're using CBG monies, to demolish these properties. They're beyond the point of rehabilitation, is that correct? Because,
That is correct.
and, okay, and the CBG, how is that fund tied to what those dollars are earmarked for? How does that help meet the criteria for CBG that they would allow demolition?
Elimination of slum and blight. Most of these, or many of these, I should say, are fire damaged homes. Some are homes that are just sat in disrepair to the point where they're falling down.
Okay, so these have been identified and the commission has looked at them and saw that this is only for historical record, was that there was an effort one time when there was mass demolition of properties, which was detrimental to the city because at that time the city officials were kind of young and inexperienced. And when you destroy homes, you destroy revenue tax base. And we created this Nagatoo community with a lot of vacant lots. And there was a home that was on Broadway that was real solid brick home that was demolished because they said that people were smoking crack and the renters were there. And with that house, you could have just moved out those individuals and that could have been a good house. So just making sure that these homes have been looked at and make sure, that they are not those homes that can be saved and put a taxpayer in them, just making sure of that. And was there CBG associated plan that you remove blight? And was there a question from CBDG as to what will become of this land once these 27 properties are demolished? And the last question, there was also a major issue with the demolition, where demolitions were shortcutted and did not follow the proper standard of demolition. And in terms of, removing basement, there was some properties where the property was just collapsed into the basement and then covered over, with filled dirt and sand. Are we going to have some check and balances to make sure that the demolition is done properly? Thank you, through the chair.
The question is yes to the last concerns that you raised. As a matter of fact, if anyone would be interested and like to, we've developed specifications for the demolition to take place that addresses everything from the process itself of starting to tear down the property, making sure that they rent a meter to put on the nearest fire plug to spray to keep the dust down and that type of thing, that the materials be properly removed, that once they are, that the foundation gets removed to at least 2 feet below the ground surface, that the basement floor has to be cracked, sewer stubbed, the whole 9 yards, and then that they're backfilled with clean fill without cellulose material in it or anything of that nature, compacted to 95% by rolling over in 12-inch layers with heavy equipment. So that, and we will have staff people inspecting before they can do these closings and that type of thing, and make sure that properties are done properly.
Thank you. Last question,
Your other question, though, about the process, and I agree with you in the past, were probably a lot of them that should not have been. We take special efforts to determine whether a house is in fact beyond rehab or not. And if it can be rehab, we prefer to try and do that. But you speak to the proper process. HUD requires that we do this state historic preservation office review of the property, and they give us a clearance. We also have a certified environmental company go in to examine whether it has asbestos in it or not, and if it has to be abated, that it can be removed. And if it's removed, then it goes to a regular landfill. If it's not removed, then we wind up having to pay a higher price to go to a Class 3 landfill. So we're covering all the bases to do this thing right this time.
Thank you. I'm going to share, one of the things that is still prevalent is the high incident of lead that I'm still finding. As the health department in terms of maybe examining these properties, what you did was excellent, because one of the things is the dust that could carry the lead that could contaminate. So that's excellent to spray that down and prevent that. So that was a concern in terms of lead. Asbestos is good. Will there be any, do we have a history from the health department already of a potential lead exposure? Because I have a pediatric lead level of 25, and I worked with the CDC and NIH, and we got that down to a positive test of 3, where 0 should be the number. There should not be any lead in the human body. But we need to know that individuals, adults who not worked in factories and testing positive for lead, that do we know of any mechanisms to make sure that these homes do not have lead, but your method that you're saying is spraying down the dust will help to abate that or minimize that. So that's a great thing that you're going to be doing and monitoring. Any idea? Because there was a funds that were given to the health department to help remove lead.
And they have been doing a yeoman's job of trying to do that over the last year. As you may or may not know, HUD requires for the homes that we, the city, do rehabilitation on using the CDBG funding. There's a requirement that lead be abated before we can work on those homes. In addition, over the last year, as a part of the overall program that included replacing lead water lines, the state, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, entered into a contract with Home Depot to provide contractors to respond to applications that were put in to address lead issues in homes in the city that qualify. They did in the last 14 to 16 months over 700 houses in the city, where they went into these homes and not only replaced the plumbing within the house and the fixtures, but they also in many instances replaced windows where they found lead, replaced some roofs, encapsulated the areas that had lead paint on it underneath the eaves and things of that nature. So while I would not say, no one would dare say all of it, but they made a significant step in trying to address it. Unfortunately, Benton Harbor, like many cities across America, has a great many homes that were built prior to 1978. And I can guarantee you that 90-something% of those homes have lead in them because lead paint, lead for plumbing, that was a state of the art back at that time. Just like 20, 30 years from now, somebody look at homes that were built now, I can guarantee you they'll find PVC in them because that's a part of the current way they do stuff. So that process is underway and ongoing, although they are starting to cut off taking in new homes, but they do still have a backlog of those that they're still working on here in the city. When you go through the city and you see these trucks sitting out in front of the lights flashing all day and so forth, they're part of that program.
Thank you, Chair.
So I just want to say, like driving through the city of Benton Harbor and I see homes, it does scare me. You know, some of them are almost falling down. I'm worried about youth getting in them, playing them, or people committing crimes in them. So I'm actually excited about this. But my question is, so once this is complete, then will those lots now be up for sale for developers to develop them, or what's the plan after the demolition is complete?
I'm gonna have to say yes and no and explain what that means. There are only about 4 of these homes that are owned currently by the city. And when those are done, we will be trying to reuse the property as part of the larger program with other city lots to build homes on. The remainder of these are owned by private parties, many of whom don't live in the city, many don't even live in the state. What we are doing is posting these properties, going through the legal required notice, which in many instances is you mail a letter to the last known address, certified and regular mail or regular mail with a list. And when they come back, you maintain them in your file that shows you made the attempt to contact them. And once a stated period of time has passed, within which if the owners did receive or cared about the properties, they should abate the problem by tearing it down. If they don't, then we tear them down and we will document and put the cost associated with everything that we did on the property's tax roll. And at a certain time in the future, when we are able to, we'll go through the county to foreclose on that property. And once we get it, then we can work with it. But that process does not really afford a full retrieval of all the costs that you put into it.
Thank you. Through the chair, with the involvement, as just stated, does that involving the county, does that property now become part of the county and subject to its land bank, or does the city still retain rights to that property?
The city retains some rights to it, and I say it that way because in most instances, those properties are going to have a tax bill on them also that has not been collected. And whenever that foreclosure process takes place, that tax bill is going to be superior to other liens that are put on the property. And so in some instances, the county will have an interest in it along with ours, and it'll be a matter of us attempting to work that out to get the best that we can out of it. But ultimately, the objective we hope to continue going forward, which is to eliminate the slum and blight condition, the appearance, the threat, the health and safety that's there, and ultimately to return that to productive property.
I'll let you a motion to move forward.
Second. All right, thank you, Mr. Little. We're gonna go ahead and move on to Parks and Rec, Bobo Casino.
Okay.
I'll refer it over to, Mr.
We have with us this evening, Joelle from Avid Mars and Marcy from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Step up front and we're gonna let them talk to you about the program. Basically what we're doing, and it doesn't necessarily require an approval, but wanted to make you aware of what we're doing. We're going after some additional money to help us with our efforts to restore and improve and reopen the Opry.
Thank you. Marcy Hamilton from Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Working with the team with Apple Marsh and the city and to try to supplement the funds that have already been awarded to the city from the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity Office. You guys have received already $1 million grant from that. We didn't get what you asked for. Joel wrote a great proposal for you guys, and there's only so much money to go around, but you got the $1 million. So we know that's not enough to do what we need to make that facility and get it back open and operational for use by the community. So another opportunity came about called the EAGLE, which is Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Environmental Justice and Impact Grant. One of the project types that you can do is rehabilitate blighted property. So the Lola Brazil Center is considered a blighted property. It's abandoned. It has a lot of issues that need to be addressed. So it was a perfect fit to try to get another $500,000 to put towards the rehabilitation of that property so we can get it open and operating for the community use. So what's not still available is money for programming and operations. So we're still looking at other grant opportunities as they come available to see where we can continue to. That's how a lot of these bigger cost projects work. You just have to continue layering the funding on, over and over. You're never going to get enough from one pot of money usually for these big projects. So it's a process, right? So this is the next step in the process is to go after this EAGLE EJ Impact Grant for another $500,000 to add to the rehabilitation of the property. And that's basically it. We would like at some point potentially to form an advisory committee that could help when the renovations start, what does that look like and what's the best way to lay out the space in there and what uses we want. And there's been a lot of said in the basketball court, is definitely important. But there's other spaces in that can be used for maybe a space to rent out for revenue for events that's available to residents. Because right now you can rent places like Gene Pod Park, the pavilion, but there's no inside space to rent that's low cost through the city. So that's maybe an option. There may be offices that could be rented out to folks at a low cost for startup nonprofits or businesses to have a place to and a little bit of revenue for the city that helps. So those are the kinds of things that we need to look at moving forward, and like I said, having some kind of advisory committee set up to help with those decisions and to move forward on how it's renovated would be great. We're not quite to that point yet. We're getting there. But tonight is just really about there's this grant opportunity available through EAGLE. One of Joel and I and Dominique from the Sustainable Business Forum and Dawn Marie Smith from the Healthy Variant are working on the application to submit for that project. So it's a good blessing. And it's due soon, it's due on my birthday, July 15th.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday, but I don't see you before.
Dr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Honorable Chair, so historical context, the armory did everything that you said. And I think, Pastor Child was here, that they would have a group that would meet there and have a ball or cotillion over 50s club or something like that. But the key thing that that the armory did was our boxing center. So that was the fight doctor. That was a very instrumental as an outlet. You know, we have Muhammad Ali just down the road, that type of thing. So boxing, theater, African dance, poetry, the Jumpstart League with basketball. And then they had rooms, exactly what you said, upstairs on the second floor, that they were done space, the rites of passage programs. Also, one room was also used for mental health, which could be added, that this could be a site. There's a lot of mental health money out there. So that we bringing mental health back into that building, may be able to solicit some more funds. Also, maybe pulling some funds from PALS, because PALS not only had the basketball, but also had boxing, to try to supply some additional funding that way. And then I think even partying up in terms of nutrition, outreach, and the major thing now, maternal health. I was discussing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running for president, black maternal health. And so there's a lot of money there, and working with the governor, that money, a doula training center or the birth workers, that could be another source of money. The governor actually put almost like $100 million into Wayne State's medical school where I'm faculty at. So, and then the city did some more in terms of Mayor Duggan. So those may be some other sources of revenue that we could kind of try to shoot past the 250, to try to reach for $1 million and see if we could pull that way. And then the thing that we did before was a program, Kick the Peace, Stop the Nonsense, Crush the Violence, where it could be an riot, anti-violence program for our youth, especially in the summertime, where we do more activities instead of the police activities of trying to lock them up, that we keep them busy and tied up so that they don't show in any course of jail ration. So those, I know they have them down in Detroit, these programs to help sponsor and fund youth. And even, I think working with the young man who did the baseball, where they can actually practice indoor, and many groups have been funding that to see if, that could be happening. So those may be some other revenue sources for you. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
So I love the fact that you mentioned an advisory committee, because I know Dr. Tynes has some great ideas, but one thing that comes to mind is, like, we're upon Olympic season, and like Simone Biles, a lot of kids look up to her, but if you're not wealthier, going to a gymnastics class may not be in reach. So I would love to get some sports in there that maybe would be super expensive, normally that our youth can, try out and see if they're great at it. So I would love that. So I like that advisory committee idea, because everyone can kind of bring their ideas and then see if there's available funding. But I think this is wonderful. Did anyone else have any other comments?
Mine is more emotional than anything. The Armory Hall Park, that section right there makes me emotional just to know we're talking about bringing it back to life. Many times people ask me to describe it, I say it is the first non-titled people's daycare center, because all of us, they grew up in that area. Your parents had to go to work and they needed to drop you off. They would drop you off at at Hall Park, because they know Aunt Sally was there or Miss Betty or somebody, and you were safe. That's all I have to say about it at this moment. So thank you very much.
Oh, I'd like to add that I think many of these ideas are good, and we can look for ways to achieve some of them once we get the facility up and open and going. When that's done, there, as the ladies have indicated, there's all kinds of space in that building. The problem has always been that once you get it renovated to where it's usable, it's the overhead costs, the electric bill, the gas bill, the air conditioning, the security, the insurance. Those are the items that have prevented us in the past from being able to do what we should do. Plus, something that also affects us here at City Hall, and it is a lack of understanding that to make that thing go is going to have to be handled in a business-like manner. If we don't have other avenues to pay for that overhead, we're going to have to charge some kinds of fees, even though they may be small, but there's got to be revenue coming from somewhere to cover those costs. If not, you go out to a point and it just stops dead because there's no way to keep it going. But I think through the process that we're working on now to try to get grants to get it back in shape, I believe we will be able to find different ways. We can talk with the school district, for example, about perhaps putting some activities in there that they might be able to lend some support. Some of the things that Dr. Tynes mentioned that may have or be able to generate some revenue that can help. And we just set it up and get it going and keep it going. That's going to be the key. And I might also add that Armory, sitting right across from Hall Park, which all sits right next to Ox Creek, is a part of that overall linear park concept of trying to improve and expand opportunities for recreation and so forth throughout that whole area. And I think it's a perfect combination.
Dr. Tynes, then we'll go into the audience.
Yeah, so thank you. So those suggestions, in terms of grant writing, that if you put those in there, that fattens up the grants. And I know receiving Kellogg grants that with the Michigan State Medical Society missed the point. They were just data collection. What we did is say we're doing data and we're trying to impact trauma and maternal health. And we were given a new grant, but their grant was reduced. So I gave you those ideas because it's not just stating this is the fact, this is the thing, but these are possibilities of making impact on what hot issues are right there to fatten up the grant to say, hey, this is something worth investing to. And because there was nobody doing maternal health in terms of trauma, what trauma the mothers went through, losing a baby, the death, the dad, that kind of thing. So these are trying to fatten up the request to bring in additional dollars and also show what you wanted to do, what you were saying earlier about your committee, was building partnership. And so partnership dollars, and I would say Kellogg is also one I didn't say earlier. I think going with them, they're very, very into impacting health in the community. Kellogg was actually, it's a Seventh-day Adventist organization that actually helped created a lot of the hospital-based practices and systems now. So, and they look at the whole community. And what he's saying with the Ox Creek and the environment, the Seventh-day Adventist emphasizes the natural aspect. So enhancing the environment and maintenance for nature, the health, psychological, infant mortality. I think you got governor buy-in and stuff like that. And, that aspect in terms of maternal health, I can help connect you with those people. Thank you. I'm the chair.
And then we had, Commissioner Henry had a comment.
Yeah, well, let me say this. The Bobo Brazil Community Center, there's a reason why the commission named it that. Now, the Bobo Brazil Community Center been down for a long time. What community do you know that don't have a community center? So there's some history to Bobo Brazil's Community Center. Down, birds flying in, windows need to be repaired. Here's a group of people, YMCA, YWCA, the Boys and Girls Club, all funded, got good money to move into Bobo Brazil's Community Center. That didn't happen. Now, 10 years later, the building is blighted. I'm so glad that somebody is here that remembers some of these stories. They never stop. Once they want something, they never stop. I'm watching it. We need to make sure that it's grassroots people that are sitting in our Bobo Brazil Community Center, building capacity. It's better there than to have big corporations come in and grow some more. So we're trying to build our people up, and we're not into and I wish you would stop calling it the Armory. It is the Bobo Brazil's Community Center that belongs to the city, the people. And if God lets me live, I'm gonna make sure that it's capacity building that comes out of our community center instead of corporation grant. Thank you.
Sure, that's gonna look into.
Yes.
To Commissioner Henry's point about this community based approach, another thing that's really come up in the recent pandemic and everything that's happened is this word of community resilience center, community resilience hub. And I think it's the core of what you're saying is like community, and what you're saying too, is a place where the community can go and be safe and have a place to gather and help build that capacity and resiliency. So there's like when things happen in the community, there is a safe place to go and gather and be. And so this concept of resiliency hub or center, I think is another way that we can really sell this project. And so we'll use that language in the grant to talk about that, how it builds capacity and resiliency. That's the opportunity here in the ways that you mentioned. So I just want to make sure that we hear you, and that's exactly where I think we're going with this.
That may be a source of some additional funding. We'll be looking also at alternative energy, the possibility of putting solar units to provide electricity for it. But overall, there are many uses that the Bobo Brazil Center could be put to, including warming center if there should be problems in the wintertime, cooling centers if you get massive heat like some places are experiencing now. I thought about this a couple of weeks ago. If we suddenly had serious heating and perhaps power outages and whatnot, where can we take people to get cool? We don't have any place, so this could be a perfect place for doing that kind of thing.
So then, Anyone else?
I don't know if funding, this is not a question for the people at the table, but for the city. We've accumulated some funds, not enough to do everything, but are we at the point of, we're gonna get their optimism that we should invest a little bit in putting Band-Aids on things like the roof and other things that will stop or slow the decay of the existing structures?
Those are going to be part of the priority areas that will be addressed with the funds that we have for doing the rehabilitation and improvements or windows, roof, the whole process.
We would always start on top and do that as quickly as possible.
I agree.
Okay, Commissioner Henry?
Glad Mr. Little brought up alternative energy. Because that is a futuristic building. It'll be there. It was built so long ago and it's so solid, it'll be there forever. And and with the state of Michigan offering all sorts of avenues for alternative energy, that building should be wired. Now, of course, here's a little history lesson. Someone in the city put thermal energy in the armory years ago, and we just took it out in the last 10 years, like a bunch of dummies. It was there already, and all we had to do was to service it. So alternative energy has always been on Benton Harbor's mind. So I would suggest that we really look at putting a lot in that building that'll cut down the expense of everything. And so if you can't raise enough money, then you raise enough ways to save money. That's what you would do if you was in your house. So let's do the same practice here. But whatever we do, we need to put every kind of alternative energy in any building that our money, city money, public money is paying for. We need to be doing that instead of trying to put up old shingles and all of that silly stuff. This is 2024. Everybody else is into it, and the government wants us to do it. So let's concentrate on really moving forward and being sustainable, because that other stuff is not sustainable. Just another way for us to fail.
So that advisory committee, would those kind of comments be able to be talked about before we get to that process? So that's another good opportunity. We will take one more. Savannah, if you have something, go ahead.
I think it's good that we're fixing our community center, but I'm also glad that some big corporations like the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA came in, keeping our youth out of trouble, keeping them fed. They're actually doing homework over the summer, so I think that's a good idea to keep that in mind. And I think that the community center, I'm glad to have like a sports thing and keeping it, so I like that.
And then we had Mr. Duncan.
Did I hear you guys say, you mentioned another name that you were on a project that you were trying to get underway? Does that mean that that would be the name of the center, or the Bobo Brazil Center would remain called the Bobo Brazil Center?
Yeah, I don't think I was,
Yes, go ahead, please address it. Thank you.
so I wasn't necessarily, no, I don't think we need to change the name of it. I mean, the Bobo News Center still works. It's just that I think we're gonna sell it as this resiliency center for the community, for these other, so it's just kind of a term, like you said, where the money is coming from and the hot issues. This is another one. You can get funding through FEMA and different other organizations if it serves this resilience center.
So from a grant perspective, you'll use the term resiliency, but it'll still be called Bobo Brazil.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want, but we're gonna sell it as that.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Duncan.
Well, I don't want to call it anything you guys want to call it. I want to call it the Mobile Field Center. I was born in the early 50s. So I'm not about to change it, just like Jane Clark Park right now. Got all kinds of signs of Harbor Shores all over the place, and those signs have been Harbor in it. The sign for the beach itself is a small sign. All Harbor Shore signs are large and in charge. That's where we feel like the corporations are stepping on top of us. And our public officials turn a blind eye or happy about it, happy to get a smile, happy to get a pat on the back and all of that, but our community is being pretty much erased because of a lot of things that you guys are really happy about. And I want to be happy too. And so do my kids. My kids need to know who the beach belongs to. So a large sign, Jane Clark Park, was really needed there, and not a lot of other signs all dotting all over the property, calling it Harbor Shores, which they were going to call Ben Harbor Shores if the commissioners at one time passed and squelched. So let's keep Ben Harbor, Benton Harbor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duncan. We'll take one more comment, Dr. Times.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, this is for a point of clarity. From what I understand from the young lady from the presentation, that it was always going to be the Mobile Center, but what we're talking about is to generate funding for its being a term in terms of resilience, in terms of sustainability. Never, two separate things. The name of this there, and what can this program or this facility do in terms of gathering money? So the name stays there. This is just fundraising efforts underneath. So always respecting Global Brazil and that history. But the history before that was Armory, but then it became Global Brazil, and that's our landmark, just like Ernie Hudson. So that will never change. It's just how we can pull money to make it sustainable, so our children are taken care of, and like Ms. Henry, that this will last another 20, 30 years that way. So that's what I thought I was hearing, and I just wanted to make sure I was clear. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Correct. So we're gonna, are you guys okay with moving this forward? Okay, so we're gonna move this forward. Next up on our agenda, we don't have any new business. So our final part of the agenda is public comments. Thank you. Okay, so no public comment. Sorry, sorry. Mr. Duncan?
Yeah. As far as, I didn't know we were going to have a public comment at the end of the show. And it's another meeting. Through the chair, I'd like to know it's like I have to race to try to remember something. But it's on me. But I'll wait till the next meeting has a senior citizens comment attached to it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a public hearing. So, okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Oh, Commissioner
I have
Henderson?
one thing, and I'll, and I'm going to.
Speak up, please.
I have one comment, that's not related to this great conversation we had about Mobile Center, but just a comment for Parks and Rec is here. We need a mobility map out at the beach, for people that have disabilities, so Parks and Rec, we need to do that. Have one of those mats so that people with disabilities can actually walk down to the beach, to the waterfront, so that's something we need to do.
Now,
Thank you, Commissioner.
I remember what I was going to say.
Okay, Mr. Duncan, you're up.
About the signs out at Jane Clark Park, there's not supposed to be all of those signs out there. That's all over the place. Harbor Shores, this or whatever it's saying. There's too many of them, and that's not what the park was meant to do, to publicize and create a lot of. Who wants to see all of that on the beach?
So I was there for our picnic and I didn't notice it. You mean on the actual beach area, you saw signs?
I saw signs, and I could barely see the Gene Clark Park sign, all the other big signs in and about and around.
Okay, Dr. Tom.
Question, Chair. I thought initially we want to make sure that we have the large Gene Clark parks with the city of Benton Harbor so that everyone knows that the Gene Clark Park is in the city of Benton Harbor. That's what I thought was the issue with making sure, and the other signs I'm not sure of, but I think he's saying making sure that landmark is identified.
Do you know,
I take golf and we ride golf carts down there and there are no shore signs that are that big where it's coming up to Gene Clark Park.
can you tell us, Mr. Duncan, where you're referring to? You in the entrance into?
You can see larger Harbor Shore signs, whatever you want to call them, other than the little
Jane
small,
Clark Park.
other than the little small sign that says Jane Clark Park. And it should be bigger, and it should have, it belongs to the city of Benton Harbor. Since all of this other stuff is running, blocking us.
Do you notice the little?
Like,
I do.
Signs.
I'm already aware that the only significant size signs where there's one there at M63 where you've got that big, but that's for the resort. That has nothing to do with Jane Clark Park. But once you pass across the street, the next sign that I see is the sign for Jane Clark Park. And then as you go in, there's a room sign that we just redid and put on the right. And then you go in, and I'm kind of lost. I'm gonna go out there again and just.
So,
that'd
Mr.
be
Duncan,
good.
if we
Yeah,
can
I'll go out.
take that away, because I need to look too, because I'm not, but we'll take it away and look, and we can wrap back around another meeting.
We got a
That's
lot-
the only
we got a
sign
lot-
because
We got a lot of money to spend on things. We need a larger sign specifying that it is the city of Benton, owned and operated by the city of Benton Harbor. It can be as large as all the other signs, as far as the paint.
Okay,
It
you
should
want,
show that we're large and in charge and not smashed. Like we got smashed out of the dunes. Nobody knows about that. But a lot of dirt went down to make sure they got the dunes, the last 3 holes of the Jack Nicklaus golf course. I won't forget, and I always talk about it too. So if you haven't heard it and you don't know about it, you can ask me. I'll tell you about it, because our lawsuit did not win because of the money that was spent. The major corporations, big money over small money, and they end up with the dunes. And I love those dunes. I was raised in those dunes. They had lots of fun in those dunes. They're not what they were. They're supposed to be better, but it's not the same.
thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Commissioner, did you have a comment? Okay.
So what you're talking about is so if you go to Gene Clark Park in any direction and you're going up into Gene Clark Park, before you get to that little drive, you make a right to go in it. There's a sign at the light that says Harbor Shores. It is a big sign. But the reason why that sign is bigger, just like any,
Point of order, let's let Commissioner speak.
thank you. If you look at any other sign in any park, and I have mentioned this several times, any park that belongs to Benton Harbor, it has the wrong sign. whether that's because it's outdated, don't have a cost, whatever it is, it's not related to that sign. They just happen to get a bigger sign. If you look at every sign in the city parks, it says, anybody know? It still says the same thing it did when I got here in 2014. Park conservancy does not exist anymore, but the signs are still there. So that sign that says Arbor Shores, if you don't know it, you will think that you're driving in an entire different city. You will. But it's recognizing, I think Mr. Little said, they're just identifying where you are. You're at Harbor Shores Golf Course.
And
That's it. It's not in reference to the beach.
That's exactly why I would say we should have a large sign for Jane Clark Park. And we do have the money to do it because we have if we can't do it, we have all of these friends like Harbor Shores and all that. They could contribute to it and make sure we get a large sign saying that it's Jane Clark Park and it's owned and operated by the city of Benton Harbor.
Okay, so thank you. We're gonna take the last two comments and we're gonna have to move on in the interest of time, but we'll revisit the sign. Dr. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. This is like point of information and clarity. We have our legislative chair here. There's actually codes and enforcement in the city manager can also, in terms of the size of a sign, the height of a sign, in terms of signage. There are codes and ordinance based on that. And as you're right, it may be out of date, and so that's the difference. So I think it's not a slight on the city, but at that particular point in time, there may be some differences. And so I think going through the code enforcement, legislative, finding out, do we need to increase the size of the sign, raise it up, lower, whatever. But I think that's where that's coming from. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Little.
I was just gonna say, while we don't have the money right now to do it, we can set that as a goal. I do recognize, and I don't disagree at all with what he's saying, the sign that does say Gene Clark Park doesn't necessarily have any additional identification for the city. That we can add. And I think it might be well to just do that.
Amen. I thank you for
Okay,
that.
I like that. Oh, sorry, one more.
If you have time, we talked about signs. This is, there was an article in the Palladium a couple weeks ago that was, had a lot of quotes from Chris Cook, who was here earlier. And he identified some areas that he felt were Harbor Shores' responsibility and some that were the cities, and then there were many gray areas. I'm interested if those gray areas have been addressed, because gray is gray. The grills are in, there are many things that are in very poor shape. And it's really, we refer to that as our jewel, but there are many pieces of our jewel that are very tarnished, including parts of the roof and other things, asphalt issues, some of the ceiling, the fill in the cracks shows that maybe they didn't put enough sealer in. Lots of maintenance items there. Sometime I'd like to be aware of discussion or point out problems.
So, Mr. Little, can you look into that and? Okay. Okay, so if there's nothing further, we're gonna adjourn our meeting. Have a great night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to.
Agreed.